We are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is P-Car Talk.
JDM cars.
Yeah.
And they've been able to stand the test once they started to get popular in the 90s.
Yeah, it's interesting that the millennials love our cars. That's like their favorite cars.
I know.
Part of it is drift and the ability to chop them up and do that drift culture. But it's fascinating how many, like, I probably have more people following that Civic that weren't even alive.
Yeah.
Then so there's two demographics. There's the people that are like us.
Yeah, the nostalgias.
That either had one or wanted one and in their 30s and 40s, or you have like 18, 19-year-olds that that's their dream car.
Exactly.
Well, I think it still goes to, it was semi-obtainable back then, and it's remained the same route. And so you've kind of had this, you still get that new wave of,
I freaking tell these kids, you need to get better dreams, man. It sucks.
Exactly. But we were just as guilty, though. Like, I was guilty about that stuff. I had dumb dreams, too, when I was young. I was just like, man, and then, like, maybe the pinnacle at that time, maybe when I was like 18 or 19, was like something JDM related with a turbo on it, maybe a Supra or something like that. That was the real dream car, right? But like, even at that time, I couldn't afford a twin turbo Supra, but I wanted one.
Yeah. Mine was an M3.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
Nice. Yeah, those are awesome back then.
Yeah, I wanted an M3. I wanted an OBD1, a 95 E36 M3. And my drug dealer friend got one, paid cash for it.
And you're like, man, I want one.
Yeah. And then the E46 came out, and I went and I wanted to finance one so badly. And so I'm like, well, maybe I would get a 330.
Yeah.
And luckily, I never did anything stupid like that. I stayed Honda until I could reasonably
See, I was
afford.
dumb. In 03, I financed an E46 M3. I had one.
Yeah.
I loved it when I had it, but man, I was broke as a
Paying
joke.
$700 a month.
I was broke as a joke, man. No kidding.
Yeah.
Dude, like, not accumulating wealth, basically spending everything I had just to have that car.
Yeah, I almost did it many times, and then I went the S2000 route, which was a couple hundred, maybe $400 a month less. And
it was a smart move.
They had maintenance too, so
Yeah, that was the smart. I did love it when I had it, but it was eventually like here we are, right? Like 17 years later, I still don't have that. I got rid of that car. I traded it in. I got rid of it, and I paid out my ass to get, I got tooken on it when I traded it in because they're like, oh, well, it's old now. Like,
there's a black book value. Enjoy.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I may be making a transition here in life, and that I may, I've always, for the last 15 years, has been this, the progression, right? So swap one to get one, swap one to get one. And I really know what I want now. So I think, I may build like a 10 or 12 car collection, if I have the room to keep them.
Yes.
And so I think I may
start doing that.
Now hopefully, if the business keeps rolling, hopefully I won't need to, to the money, from one to enter and exit.
It won't be
enter.
Exactly.
It's my GT cars, it's like I can't have two of them. And so the GT4, GT3 has been the first time where like I can reasonably have both of them.
Yeah.
And where in the beginning it was like I was stretching to get the one, and so I'd swap the one to get the other. And so now do I just hang on to them? And so
I say yes.
So I think, and that's why I'm reluctant to get rid of the E92 M3, because I have a really great one. So do I keep that? And would I like to have that in a garage? And would it be really nice to just, pull it out of the garage once every 6 months or something?
I think so. Yeah. I think that the answer to that is yes. Because what I think is, since the way you built it, because the fact that you built that Civic, not that you want the Civic, but the fact that you revisited that, I have a feeling someday, if you let that M3 go, you're going to want it back, and then you're going to just chase your tail again. You'll be like, I had a good one that I let go. Now I got to pay a high dollar for another one that's unmolested, it's perfect, and then molest it the way I want it again.
Especially if you're going to strategize on the long term, and we do think, and it will happen, that all those cars that are special, they're going to rise in value. I mean, there's no doubt.
Yeah, and you picked that car too. I mean, it's a special car. I mean, that's the only time ever BMW is going to put a V8 in an M3, and they're never going to do that again.
And it was nice.
And it's so awesome good. V8. So it's one of those things where...
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to think of it's a really not that. I don't even think I'd have a 12 car list. I think it would be 8 cars.
Yeah,
7
mine's
or 8
pretty
cars.
short too. It's not double digits. Mine's single digits. I think I top out around 7 or 8, where I could live at and just be like, I've got everything I've ever wanted now.
And then you have like some new rotators, where you rotate out. So, I'd have a 997 GT3 RS 4.0 we talked about. I'd have the E92 M3. I'd have a 458 Speciale, what are those, 2013 or 14. I'd have some variant of a 991 GT3. I'd have a GT4. And then I would have some like rotate between like an NSX and R8. So 6 or 7 cars would be it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and an E46 M3. I would like to have like a really clean, like 5,000 mile, $100,000 version of that car.
Would you go hardcore and get the CSL like version or whatever?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I would probably want an 05. I think that were they Interlagos, so an 05 competition package, blue, and nice. Try to find a non-sunroof car, manual, and then modify it really nicely.
Yeah, that's $100,000 car already.
Yeah, I'd have to pay 70 or 80 to get one. And then, so that's something I'd like to get at some point. And I think the 997 GT3 is something I'd really, that's the aspirational car that I think I'm going to get inside of 2 years. I don't do dreams. I freaking make it happen.
That's the way to do it, man. Absolutely. It's like, it's a goal and then just go get it. Like, I agree with that. I think that's where we're at in life. I don't think we're at like, oh, well, someday if that happens, it's like, all right, that's going to happen at this point. Like, let's go after that and do that. But yeah, that's a pretty awesome garage. Do you think this is transitioning a little bit, but it's still on the same topic. The GT4 RS is going to be coming. Obviously, it's going to be a paddle shift car. Does that intrigue you at all?
Not really, because if it was a manual, then I'd want the RS version. But no, I want to. If I'm going to have a GT4 and a GT3, I want the manual GT4 and the PDK GT3.
I kind of have the same feeling, even though I don't own that. Like my thought process behind that, I thought the same thing too. And I talked to you, I think, on one of the podcasts about it. I said, if they make that car in a manual, the RS, that would be a game changer, because now they're making a modern RS and a manual. Like I think that would be the new everybody wants.
Oh, exactly.
Like, everybody would want that.
That's a GT3 decision there. Do I get a GT3 or do I just get a GT4S? And
did you see the 981 GT4 that Tony has? Did you see they're calling it a GT4 RS? Yeah. That thing is pretty well done. I don't know whose car. I probably know whose car it is, but I don't know whose car it is.
It's pretty wild, though.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It has. I don't know if someone probably bought it. My friend Rob Orlando was looking at it. He was asking me about it. I said, wow, they had it like 150, 109 or something like that, which is more than what those cars go for. But
for what's into that car,
grand
I was just about to say, like the residual, like the what's in it, like if which we do, what it costs to get it that way, that's still a great buy. Oh yeah, because you think about all the stuff you don't have to go through to get it that way.
Yeah, it's extremely well done. I thought about that car. I'm like, well, shoot, maybe I should buy that thing.
Yeah, like maybe I'll get rid of mine and keep that one.
So that would be the main appeal to a GT4 RS, would be just the look, the wider fenders,
the aggressiveness of it,
the little extras.
Yeah, but is that worth a $60,000 move? Probably not for me.
Yeah,
especially since it's PDK. I would want to have it in a manual.
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit offline about this, and you hinted at it. So the 992 coming out, obviously we've seen spy shots, and they're going to come out with a touring. Is that something that's kind of got your attention?
Yeah, so that would be in talking about this, building a garage now, and part of it is going to be, I'm moving, so I'll have a garage at my house, and then this will become a garage because all the warehouse stuff will be going out, and so I will have covered storage for cars, so that I can, because I like to have all my cars clean and then just have one dirty. And right now I have all dirty and one clean. And then if I clean too many, it sits out in the pole barn and gets all dusty.
And then it's all for naught, right?
Yeah. And so, this facility will be able to store, say, 4 cars, and then I can do, 3 or 4 at my house that were all stored comfortably. And so, in a perfect world, I would like to have, GT4, a GT3, RS, and I would like to stay on the wave and have whatever the new variant. I don't know that the RS is going to supplant like the 992 RS. We'll see, but I would like to have a GT3 touring in some paint to sample color of some sort. Would be cool. I'd love to have something like Brewster green, like a dark, like British Racing green.
Would look good.
I'd like to have that with some dark tan, seats, but rest black interior, and
That'd be sharp.
So that's something I'd like to have and keep.
Yeah, that sounds like a good trio. I like that.
But I mean, 3 of the same cars. So.
Yeah, it is. I know it sounds like, for people listening, that probably sounds pretty like asinine, but like I'm so in the weeds with it. Like I that makes total sense to me. Like, and I don't know if it's just self-justification. Like, I'm justifying all of those cars. Like, for me, like, I'm like, oh, well, I've got a manual Turbo S, and then I've got an air-cooled, and then I'm getting a Safari build. Like, they're all really different to me in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody on the outside probably looks at us and they're like, you guys are crazy. They're all the damn same thing.
Well, if there were dozens of other, like we were talking about, like in the 90s or 2000s, there were dozens of other like amazing cars that I was aspiring to have, then yeah, it'd be a waste. Yeah. I wouldn't have a GT4 and a GT3. I would have, like, if the new M3 was awesome, I would have a new M3. I wouldn't have a GT4.
That's true. I mean, you had me thinking about it ever since you said it. There's no one's really creating something.
There's nothing I want.
At all. It's all...
The only car that I think is cool is a Supra, and it doesn't come in a manual.
What do you think about the BMW M2 CS?
I hate that car.
Yeah.
Because it has an S55.
Yeah.
And the motor's terrible. I mean, the motor's great, but it's a sell your soul to the devil.
Gotcha.
To get that. I mean, so that car, it looks great. Other than you'd have to get rid of the stock exhaust because it looks like a wet diaper, full diaper hanging off the back of it. Because they made the rear bumper, they didn't bring the valance down enough, and then the exhaust is hanging too low, so they painted it black. That helped a little bit. Yeah. But the M2, when they put the S55, which delivers amazing power, super linear, but it sounds terrible. Even with the new, equal length exhaust they're making for them, it helps with the farting and the weird sound, but it's just what I was planning on doing was, when I bought my E92, was I was thinking about buying an M2, but I wanted to do like an individual color or something cool, like a British Racing green or something like that. And then they came out with a competition, and I'm like, this is terrible. I know it's faster. I know it's more tunable. Yeah. But that engine is just, it sounds awful. And the problem is people love it. They support it. And so BMW.
Well, that's why I wanted to get because you're a BMW enthusiast also, and I wanted to get your headspace behind it, because the general populace is in love with that car.
I know. And that's the problem. And so I know exactly what's happening with BMW. And you look at the new M3, which is like the most hideous thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah. What are they doing with that grill, man?
People have been telling them that on a smaller scale since the beginning of time. For every M3, the hardcore enthusiasts have said, what are you doing? And so BMW thinks they know better.
Okay, so it's one of those. They're like, it's going to fall on deaf ears. They don't care.
The problem is they probably do know better, and that people are now. I'm seeing, like, when they first showed pictures, it was all puke and poop emojis, puke face poop emojis, and now you look at it, it's like 50% of the people are saying they love it.
They're drinking the Kool-Aid, huh?
And then 50% are poop emojis, and then eventually it'll be, there'll only be the 10% of us left. And BMW is going to see that, and they're going to sell a bunch of cars to idiots.
They're like, see, we win.
It makes me...
I thought that, when I first saw that, I thought that was a joke. I thought it was a Photoshop thing. I'm not even kidding just to say that, like, on air. I thought it was a joke. I go, somebody Photoshopped this. This isn't funny. Why'd they do this to this car? And then, like, that is what it looks like.
Well, I can see two things. I can see it probably is an engineering thing. It's getting air And the other thing I can see is they try to go retro, and that's technically those grills are from back in the day. Those old.
Well, they're carrying that design model through
Traxxas.
all of their lines, though.
Yeah.
Like even like what the not the X7,
all
whatever.
of it.
All of those cars are getting that design language, which is awful.
And it's so big and bulbous and
Yeah.
and then you look at the seats they put in the launch car, and they're like lime green and light blue, and like just, I mean, one of the greatest things about BMWs was their just simple, classic, classy
it's a German
engine,
style.
German
What's what they
engineering.
used to be, but they haven't. Now they're not.
They're
that way.
hiring
Yeah.
French or something to
Yeah.
come and be the
Something.
engineer, or some flat Italians
Yeah.
and French to come in there and flash it up a little bit. And it's just, I like the boring guys, you know?
Heads up, BMW. Remember the E39 M5? That car? Make cars like that again. Like, that was very simple. Like, it was enough where you saw it and you knew, if you knew what it was, you knew it was. But if you didn't, it could blend in. And that was the cool thing about all their M products back then.
It saddens me because I would literally get a new one every year. Like, if I love the car, like I would be so excited to like be a part of the process, and I would get like F80. I would have gotten a 2015, 16, 17, 18. I would have gotten a new one every year, and kept up with all the updates. And I'm at the point in my life where I could do that. And and it's dead to me. I have no interest. It's just terrible.
Yeah, their design language has really fallen off the reservation.
The motors they put in them are a disaster. You know, the new M5 is a ZF automatic.
Yeah.
It's not even a dual clutch anymore. And they all fart. You know, the overrun that they do, and in order to
What is
keep
that
it in
called?
boost.
The hot boy tune where the burble blah, blah, blah,
Burble
blah, blah,
tune.
blah,
It's
blah, blah.
just so. Oh my god!
The hot boy tune.
I'm turning into the old man, but
I don't think so. I think it's you like what you like. And
there's a
just 'cause you're getting
classic.
older,
I love take a Cutlass 454. I mean, you can't not like that. It's a great car.
Yeah.
I don't aspire to own one, but
Yeah.
that old big cam V8. I don't care who you are. If you're a car guy,
Yeah.
it never gets old.
No, anything cammed V8 sounds awesome.
And then you take a 90s Supra, it sounds incredible, or a 90s or 2000s GTR.
Oh, yeah.
They sound great. And then BMW shows up with they finally give you a car that decimates all, and it farts. Like, what in the world is going on? Like, why Nissan can make a turbo sound good?
Yeah.
Why
good
can't BMW?
Yeah.
Porsche's turbos are at a disadvantage because it's right there.
Yeah.
But even they don't sound terrible, especially in the car.
No.
Now the car is a little whooshy sounding, but
a little intakey sound.
Yeah, but
vacuuming, but
like they literally made it sound terrible.
Yeah, I don't know how they got away with it.
488 sounds fine,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and when you get the McLarens sound great.
oh yeah, phenomenal. Their
Yeah.
turbos. Yeah, that's a great point actually. That we've never really talked about. Where why haven't they got it together?
Well, they think it sounds good. They think they're being different. They're doing it on purpose. Just I always complain about, why do they have this wet noodle, manual? And that's because they think that's better.
This is the best. We know better.
No, you want a mechanical feel.
Yeah,
And they just won't frickin' listen.
yeah. I guess all of their engineers and all the guys that basically left with all the other cars.
Yeah, well,
like that.
peace
jet.
out,
Yeah.
BMW. I'm done with you. It's
Yeah.
sad because the enthusiast group was the best, and now it's a bunch of fist pumping,
Yeah.
spiky haired
You're right.
douchebags.
It's changed a lot, because I remember even back then when BMW guys, I would say, and you talked about the progression. I think a lot of it was that way with Porsche. Like, a lot of Porsche guys came from BMW, myself included.
Yeah.
Same.
I loved BMWs. I had them. They were awesome. I wanted to daily an M5 as my daily and have a track spec M3. That was what I wanted. I had an M3. I was working towards that. And then, you start to make a little bit more money and you start to transition. But anyways, it used to be that same lines where racing was important. The mechanics were important. Mechanicals were important.
Right.
And
You just felt like the engineering was important. to
Yeah,
them,
it
and I
all
think they
got away
lost
from
that.
all of that.
Yeah.
Where it got more into like, well, let's make it like a really dashing color because, all of this other weird stuff. You see some of these wild colors, like you say, even like with BMW, and it's like almost they're trying to be like PTS stuff. They're trying to copy other people instead of keeping their own identity because they never used to do weird stuff like that.
Yeah, and then the only way that I can the analogy I keep coming back to and explaining it is there was at some point there was a selling of the soul.
Yeah.
And they sold the soul because just like Honda, we'd always apologize for no torque and and making lots of noise, not going anywhere. And BMW, E36 was slow, the E46 was slow, the E92 was slow, and each one of them had little quirks and problems.
Exactly.
The E60, which is like the most beloved car. Nobody wanted that car back when it was new.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted an E60 M5. Not one single person. They couldn't sell them to save their lives.
You're right.
And now it's like that's like the hot boy's dream to have the
Exactly.
have the V10 the Lamborghini sound.
100%. Yeah, like everybody wants one of those.
But all of those cars had quirks, they had character, they were slower than everything else that were the competitors, the Mercedes competitor or the other competitors in the market. But they had, they were the ultimate driving machine.
They had soul.
Character and soul. And so when the F80 came out, now you have this massive tunable platform. The soul was sold. So the driving feel, the steering feel, the weight transfer, the way it's set up, the best looking car ever.
Yeah.
I think the F80 M3 is one of the best looking cars ever built. So you had this amazingly built car.
Sexy car.
Tons of horsepower. Amazing power delivery. Everything on paper is perfect. But yet there's no soul. And I had that car for 2 years. I got a launch car. I was so excited. I spec'd it out. I picked it up at Performance Delivery Center, drove it home through the mountains, and in a year I'm like, why don't I have this thing? I love walking up to it and looking at it, but I hate driving it.
Yeah.
And I hate the sound of it. It's so bad. I kept holding on to hope that they'd eventually fix it. They finally have something with the equal length exhaust that the Activists come out with and a couple other companies. Finally something that makes it sound normal.
Yeah.
But it still farts at the end of that. And so...
And I agree. Like, I love the way that car looks, too. And when I saw that, like, when they were launching that car, I was like, man, this is probably, like, the best M3 they've ever made, like, looks-wise.
And then...
And that was before,
drive
I
it.
knew all of that stuff went into
Before
it.
you hear it.
And the problem is that people absolutely love it. And so I'm screwed.
Well, I think it's just one of those things, too, where it's almost the people that are in love with it for the wrong reasons. As far as like they don't love that, like the older ones, how we loved they had soul. They're in love with. I think they're in love with it for the tunability.
Yeah, they want to
Like,
be faster.
they just
go
wanna
stop like
chase-
the stoplight.
Yeah. They just
and they
wanna
love
chase
the
the
burbles. They love the sound.
Yeah, they want to be seen. They want to make that noise. They want the car to be fast. That's all they want. They don't want it to have that feel like we're, like you said, I'm in the mountains, I'm driving, and the car's just the exhaust. The car sings. It makes this like perfect noise.
But they also might not have any background at all. They might not know. They don't know what they don't know.
But see, when I didn't know, I wanted my car to make noise, but I wanted it to be loud noise because it was so good. I wanted more people to hear it.
Yeah.
And even back in the day, when the old fart can, exhaust on a Japanese car, and you'd have the kids who just didn't get it.
Yeah.
I wanted to have like this throaty intake.
Sound. Yeah.
Or of course, as much as I hate Corvettes, I loved Camaros and Corvettes and how they sounded, and that was just like I always joked when I was younger. I want to buy one and just rev it up in the garage and turn it off.
Yeah.
And so now you have these cars that just sound terrible, and you have kids buying Corvettes and putting burble tunes on. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would you want to take the only good thing about that car and make it bad? It's nuts.
I know. Has a great exhaust note, and you're screwing it up. Like, what are you doing?
So you take a C63S sounds worse than the S55 M3. It's like this giant V8 huffing through a straw with farts and pops put at the end of it to mask it. Like, I don't understand why
Well, I mean-
GTR can sound so good and yet
Yeah.
BMW Mercedes can't.
Well, then on top of that too, it goes back to like with the knowledge, like we know, like what's happening during that burble tune too. So like when I hear that stuff, and like I know from a mechanical standpoint, I'm like, man, so you're basically you tuned your car to shut the valves to dump all of that gas in there, so the exhaust could just burn it up instead of it's unspent.
Right.
And I'm
It's
like,
inefficient.
Yeah, I'm like, this
yeah.
is why are people doing this? But it's
cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. We know why. It's because it's cool.
Yeah, it's trendy.
know?
That's what it is. It's trendy, and it's the lemmings following the lemmings is what it is, as opposed to people being like, "This is stupid."
And I've always been the opposite, to just try to be different. You know, try
Same.
to listen to different music, have a different bent. To this day, you know, I'm into detailing, but I'm always doing something different than everybody else.
Yeah.
And I have no desire to follow the crowd, and even though there is kind of a classic standard with cars that's correct
Yeah.
in my world, that's really, it's always been anti, because everybody was buying Altezza lights and Racing Heart wheels
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Underglow back in the day, and I wanted to buy TE37s and
Same.
Comtech parts and Jackson Racing.
I thought
You know?
Underglow was dumb the first time it came out.
Yeah, yeah.
Now the second time it's making a second run, and it's still dumb.
And brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now they're LEDs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's transferred to everything. I mean, it's even in the
Trucks,
truck world.
Yeah,
Like I
they
was
put it
in
inside the wheel.
downtown
and the
St.
wheel.
Pete having dinner the other night because I live in St. Pete, and there's this huge, hot boy truck coming down with the skinny tires and the 35-inch rims on it, but lifted all to hell, and it's, I mean, lit up like a spaceship with all this underglow, and and this is probably the old man in me coming out, but I'm like, what's the point of that? Like, it doesn't.
Take a cool truck that
you
could
took an
do
off-road
awesome
truck
stuff. Yeah.
and made it off-road capable, and you made it basically a Christmas tree going down the road, and you paid $100,000 for an F-250 Lariat King Ranch edition to make it unable to tow, unable to go off-road. What? I don't get it.
And it's not making it different, because when they go, everybody else is doing the
There's a
same
train of
thing.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think in general people are rather unoriginal.
Yeah, I think
and that's
so,
good.
too.
Good for me, because
Yeah.
then I can
I was good.
Show them the light.
do stuff
Yeah.
that provides value to the world that's very different.
Exactly.
And it's by being mainstream is different.
Yeah,
By
exactly.
sticking to simple rules.
Yeah.
Or
Just being a free thinker makes you different, right? Like as opposed to like you're like, well, okay, I don't like that because that doesn't appeal to me. It's not because I don't think you guys all think it's cool, and I'm not just trying to be different. I really don't think it's cool.
Well, I think in pretty much anything, there's a classic style. There's a classic a thing that doesn't get dated.
I agree.
So like for instance, the gauge cluster in the Civic Si, the guy put overlays on it. And at the time, he probably thought that was the coolest thing. You got to improve this.
Yeah.
But you pull it off, and it just looks classic. It looks
Clean.
great and
Yeah.
clean. And it was great then, and it's great now.
Exactly.
Whereas, or like in home design, like you have these trends where people do, think of orange countertops and green shag carpet. Like I would think at the time, I would have rebelled against that completely. Say, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you just choose gray countertops
Something
and
that-
brown,
Yeah.
tan carpet or
Be
something?
contemporary about it. Yeah.
And it's like in the garages, I see this so often where, for a long time it was you paint a red stripe on the wall and you hang banners, and now the latest thing is to do these hex lights, to these goofy because now you can take LEDs
Yeah.
and you can put strips of them, and it just seems so clear to me that. It might be 6 months, but probably 6 years from now, you're going to walk in and say, "What was I thinking?"
Yeah. I agree.
And so I just feel like, in cars, the same thing. There's a classic, and that's why Porsche's so appealing. There's a modernization, but there's classic things that work.
I mean, you think about their dash layout. I mean, it was the same for the longest time. And there's a reason for that, because it works. And then some people say, well, that's boring. It's not different. But it goes back to being timeless, though.
Well, look at a GT2 RS with that goofy red interior. That's not going to age well.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know,
You're going to go back and look at that in 10, maybe even less
say,
years.
man,
and go,
I wish it didn't have that.
and be
Great
like,
car, but
yeah,
boy, I wish it didn't have that
this
weird
looks
red interior.
really wonky right now, man. Like,
And I think it all comes back to this. All ties together of the BMWs is sounding terrible and the weird grills and people doing weird lights in their garage. Dudes in general, you have to fight that desire to put stickers all over your dresser.
yeah.
Even to this day, my restoration hardware dresser, I'm like, man, I got all these stickers. I'm like, I'd like to put them on there.
Yeah,
That's my dude curse,
that's
that's
a
neon
great way.
signs and
Yeah.
weird lights and painting accent walls and doing weird crap.
Yeah.
You have to fight that dude,
Yeah.
putting underglow on your lifted truck.
Yeah.
You have to fight that tendency and think about what's classic and what works.
You're like, this may be cool for 6 months, like you said, but am I going to really regret this in a little bit? And a lot of times the answer is yes, to be honest with you.
Hella flush, heavy camber, the
Yeah.
VIP style. All these things you're going to look back and say, man, that was dumb. My one dumb thing with cars is and back in the early 90s, I wanted TriStars, TSW TriStars.
Okay. I know
Remember the
exactly
triangle wheels?
I know exactly what you're
I
talking
wanted
about.
an S10 with TriStars on it. I thought that was some kid had. I
You were
thought that was
doing
the
it,
coolest
yeah.
thing ever. And that was my that was my curse.
Yeah, that was your bonehead.
I
move.
never wanted Altezza taillights. I never wanted underglow. I never wanted 20-inch wheels in my Civic.
Yeah.
Even to this day, all the stuff on my car was very similar then. It's classic. All the stuff I wanted then still holds up today, and just because it was just a classic, simple move.
Yeah.
And I think if you keep that theme in your house and your on your cars and the paint colors you choose and things
Yeah.
you do, it's just
I think those things like you're talking about too, they stand the test of time, right? That's what makes them a classic, right? That's why we refer to them as classic, because it still looks good, right? Like you're not going to go like prime example, that red interior that you're talking about on a brand new GT2 RS, right? Like that's really shouty, and someday when we're old men and there's a whole nother generation that comes along below us, it's 30, 40, and they're doing well, and they see that car and it's a vintage car at that point, and they look at it and they're going to look at it and they'll be like, who the hell spec'd this?
And I think about that like with my green interior. It's like, does this hold up? And it's right on the edge.
I think it's a neat contrast. I really do.
It's right on the edge.
I think yours is right because it has something to do with a launch. They did like the
Right.
So I think
That lizard green
I
color,
think when it has a purpose behind it and you can speak to that purpose, I think there's something. But I'm saying, like, if you were to go do that and they didn't launch that way and you did that on your own, I would be like, you drank some absinthe that night. Like, you were tripping, man? Like, what were you doing? You're like, well, I thought it looked all right.
A little green.
But the fact that there's some thought,
well, but you could argue that the GT2 is the same thing.
You could say that, but
that was the color. That was the standard color.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the end, it's an opinion that
Subjective,
but is largely debated by the masses.
Yeah.
And this is part of the reason why I will always be limited in life, because I rebel against the masses.
Yeah, exactly.
I rebel against
Conformity.
Yeah, and just choosing what is hot, what is cool.
Because I think it's going to cool off after a little bit, because it's just because you've been around long enough, especially even when you were young, like you were an old soul, as you said. You could see that stuff like even die off, like where people go. And remember back then, before there was a lot of tuner stuff, people would go to AutoZone and buy a bunch of stupid crap and put it on their cars, and people are still doing that stuff.
Just in a different style.
Yeah. And it's just, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, these AutoZone cars, and it's like, you took a decent car and made it awful with all of this crap, this garbage you put on it.
But I think about like the garages that I design now. Like the garage I did in Virginia. I did Emmanuel's garage in Virginia. I couldn't imagine that 20 years from now that looked outdated. Yeah, there may be some new technology and things, but the gray and black is timeless.
Yeah, it'll be fine forever.
Now, if I did some crazy, if I did those goofy alien bee lights,
did
and,
neon tiles on the floor and stuff like that, like
it wears out, you know.
It says something for that chrome scheme.
Think about guys who do, checkerboard floors.
Yeah.
I mean, like Barry Maguire, his garage in his house, and Maguire's or not in the house, but in the original Maguire's facility was like, in the 80s was like the coolest thing ever.
Hot rod shop, it's checkerboard.
Yeah.
Now you look at it, it's like, what in the world?
Yeah.
This is the most hideous thing ever.
Yeah. You end up having a seizure and they're walking around looking at it.
I think I would have thought that was hideous back then too.
Yeah, I don't think I would have gone with that route, even though that might have been like the hot rodder scheme and all that kind of stuff. I think even if I lived back in the day and I built a hot rod, like in the 50s, the guys are building like 32 Fords, I think mine would have been as consistent matte black. Where people were painting all these like stripes and weird things and bomber girls and all that stuff. I think I would have probably just had a matte black one. Like that's as far as it would have went. Like just looked real like race car-y, like maybe unfinished for the times. So like if you lived in that era, I think that's probably what I would have described me, like something not like where it's super shouty or, where people were putting Bass paint, like it was like glittery paints and all that kind of stuff on it.
And I think maybe it's a smarter way to live, like BMW is catering to, they're skating to where the puck is.
Yeah, I think for them, it could be survivability, right? Like guys like us are dying off. Maybe there's more of the others than there are of us. So it's one of those type of deals, right? So we'll cater to the masses to sell more cars.
I don't know. I don't do this in my business at all, where I'm marching to the beat of my own drum.
Yeah.
Like I'm not interested in I would have so much more appeal if I just if I was interested in what's going on with graphene, what's going on. It just seems clear to me when things are bullcrap and when they're legitimate.
But do you think? I think the people that do buy your product and stand with you is because who you are, though.
Yeah, yes, there is the but that's niche. So there's a niche demographic, and I've chosen to take that path because I enjoy those people more.
Yeah.
There's less likelihood of me having culture clashes with the audience or the people, the customer base, the client base. If you stick to your guns and because otherwise I'm going to turn off.
Yeah.
Like the Tesla's a classic example. Every single video, I'm going to refer to them as Tesla nerds. And the ones that aren't nerds won't take offense. They'll think it's funny.
Exactly.
But they have a Tesla. I have a Tesla. So we're both Tesla nerds.
Exactly.
But we're not really nerds because I can go out and fire a 40-mile-an-hour spiral with a football.
Exactly.
And I could squat 300 pounds.
Exactly.
And
right.
nerds can't do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I know I'm not a nerd, but I do have a Tesla, so that makes me a Tesla.
Yeah, you're
nerd.
part of that group. Yeah.
And so I'm going to turn off the people that don't belong.
Yeah. But I also think too, and it goes back because you run your own business for a while now, and I think your ethos and your culture behind it was smart, because kind of like what we're doing is we could have done like an all automotive podcast, right? Like, but that's not what really made us tick. And I think if you stay true to who you are, you don't have to front, right? Like, and pretend to be something else, because it'll eventually catch up, right? Like you said, you'll turn off.
Maybe.
Yeah. But I think
that's what we're questioning here.
I think if you do it long enough.
Are you smart as BMW to just cater to what culture wants?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they're just a different animal now. Like they have a boardroom. I'm sure all these clowns sit on and they vote on where their design's going to go. Like we're small time. We're talking about how we run our own things, and we're staying true to what matters to us, and we do what we do because we love it, and we don't really care if you don't like it. There's the door. And I think for people that are doing that becomes less and less common. I think there's so many more of going to the masses to just make the buck, right? Like who cares? Like, as opposed to where BMW maybe could have not let the board monkeys tell them what to do. They could have sit there and say, well, this is not what we do. This isn't BMW. We're not doing that. This isn't in our design culture. Somebody could have stood up You know, somebody could have made it, you know, maybe somebody did and they
There
got
had
voted
to have
down.
been. Yeah,
and they
yeah,
got
yeah.
voted down. But unfortunately, there was enough of those guys that pushed against that.
There's no way that the majority of people could sit there and say this is it.
Yeah. I'm
We
sure there was
got it.
I'm sure there was a big internal fight there, but unfortunately the yes ma'ams won on that one.
Well, I just hope, I pray it doesn't sell. Please, people, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Please don't buy it.
Yeah.
It's the only way we're going to get through to them.
That's true.
It's the only way, because if it sells, then we're wrong.
Then you
They're
don't
right.
have. Oh yeah, like back to what you're saying, Matt. Like if you don't have a voice, the only voice you have in that is don't buy the product. Is the only way.
Well, I'm not not a million years. I'm not doing it. Yeah. This thing is hideous. A big, giant car needs to be literally 75% of the size it is. Mm-hmm. It needs to be. It needs to be. You know, it needs to be 25% smaller. It needs to be lighter.
Well, and if they did that, then they would save money because it's less materials, there's less everything. It's so much more efficient, and that doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't.
Yeah,
go that
make it smaller, which would make it lighter. There's no reason why an M3 shouldn't be under 3,000
No,
pounds.
I totally agree
There should
with
be a
that.
target goal on the whiteboard. It should
Yeah.
be
It needs to be
3,000.
2750 and make it super light.
Yeah.
I know it's hard with safety and crash testing.
But it
and
can
all
be
that.
done. I mean, you spend all that. They're spending all that R&D and design and all that for what they've come out with. It's like, what are you guys doing? Are you guys asleep at the wheel here?
I think what happens, this is what I battle every day, is that, you think about a retailer and you think about, well, I want to capture as many people as I can. And then we have shareholders and, a publicly traded company and you have a board of directors and all this. Like, I need to appeal to as many people as I can. So I'm going to sell this soap. Well, I'm missing out on these sales, so I should sell that car soap. I said, well, but then I'm really missing out on these people too, so I'm going to sell that car soap. Next thing, you have 32 car soaps. And so this car, started out as a certain size, and then, well, if we add 2 inches to the leg room, then we can add in a demographic of moms, and then if we change it to this color, we can move the age demographic down 2 years.
That's exactly. You're absolutely right.
that's what's
This is
happening.
exactly what happened. That they got in there and they let everybody put their hand in it.
And now it becomes a catch-all. She's like, well, the grills are this big, but man, if we make it this big, it could really change the industry.
We could be a trendsetter. You're like, yeah, okay. Good luck
But
with
maybe
that.
it works. I mean, look at female fashion is the classic example of not classic.
Yeah.
Not dated.
Yeah.
What's the current thing is all these chicks are wearing their pants up to their. It
Yeah.
looks so stupid.
I
I don't
know.
think there's a guy on earth that likes that.
No,
Who cares?
But they don't care. They don't care what guys think.
no.
Or remember like the poof thing in their hair?
Oh
They did
yeah,
that thing. It was
yeah.
like, you're so stupid.
The front bump. That's what
or
it
the
was.
tramp
Yeah, yeah.
stamp.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on and on of all these stupid things that the female fashion takes on.
Yeah.
That almost
That dies
none
out
of them
so
are
fast.
cool. Yeah. Almost none of them are cool.
Yeah.
And yet they, they do it because
You're right. Maybe they're just trying to be a trendsetter for the time, and then just like sell a dead product to make sales, to make a quota. They're chasing a number now. It's a shame.
Yeah, and they're laughing at Porsche staying niche with the GT car division that's wildly successful, extremely
And all
profitable.
the other enthusiasts too. It give Porsche people crap, or Porsche in general crap about like, oh, they all look the same. They all look this, and it's like, yes and no. You're kind of right and you're kind of wrong. Like if you educate yourself, you can definitely tell that they're, even within the generations, we talk about dot ones, dot twos, all that stuff. There's variance within that. They're perfecting a product. Yes, maybe for the layman, when you look at a car, they look all the same, and maybe you can just tell that, okay, well, that one's older than that one, and that's about as far as it goes. But it's also one of those things where, and I'm going to compare another brand, which is kind of up there. No one gives Rolex shit for making the same Submariner that they've made for 50 years, and people are still lining up to buy them.
Right. They just make slight improvements to it,
Yeah.
over the
Ceramic
years.
bezel.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to what you said before. It's an opinion discussed amongst the masses that it doesn't really matter, right? Like, because most of those masses aren't owners or buyers for that vehicle.
Right. And that's the experience that I've had in my, niche business as well, is that, if I pick the one soap and then I say this is the one, I mean, this is the best one, it's the one that I prefer to use most, and then the masses are going to say, well, it's funny because the masses won't buy what I'm saying, and they call the niche people sheep.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we're the lions.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. We're the free thinkers.
Yeah, you're the sheep. You know?
Exactly.
They get what we're talking about here. No one's the vast majority of people that are following me are not following anything blindly. They're following it with extreme amount of education.
Same with us.
And they're making a choice to say, well, this guy has put in the work, and the amount of work that I deem of value.
Yeah.
And you know, I got I had to shut it down, but on Instagram, this one guy, he
the trolls. We're talking to you, trolls, if you're listening.
Yeah, this guy was he was just calling messaging to thank me. Yeah. And it didn't go well, but he just said, "I want to let you know, thanks a lot for teaching me how to buy all this stuff elsewhere, cheaper." He says, I used all your videos, and I used it all to go out, and he's like, but then he was asking me a question. So he was
giving you an FU thank you.
Yeah. But he couldn't see why this wasn't a big deal. And then at the end of it, he's asking me a question because he didn't get it right. He didn't buy it right. And so he's like, interesting. And well, what about this and that? So he's asking me all these questions about my, the one gun that I have manufactured. You can't get anywhere else. And of course, he doesn't want to pay for it. And so he's like, well, how does this work? Because what he's clearly trying to do is trying to get me to answer how to replicate it for less money.
Nope.
And I said, what you should do, I didn't even know he bought everything elsewhere yet. And I said, what you should have done, you just buy it all from me.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why would I do that? Then you won't get it wrong. He said, well, why would I do that? You give me all the information. I watched all the videos, and I'm a smart shopper. And I said, well, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I said, you should honor the source. He says, well, I'm not. There's three type of people that follow you. One are the haters. Two are the sheep who just follow everything you say, and three are people like me. And so I guarantee you the guy had ad blocker on.
Yeah.
Right. So he probably didn't even watch the videos with the ads
100%,
on.
Yeah.
It's just a taker in life. He's the same guy. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but he's the same guy. I'm talking about niche and sheep, who I don't know. But you guys, you go to the airport. And I'm, I have all these points, so I always fly first class. Mm-hmm. So I'm off the plane first. And when you fly Delta first class, your bag comes off first. Yep. But I paid, $1,000, $1,200 for my seat. Mm-hmm. And so then I go down to baggage claim to get my bags. And I always stand, like, let's say baggage claim is, 10 feet away. Mm-hmm. I find a spot because I'm the first one there because I'm the first one off the plane. And I know my bag's coming out first. Yeah. Because they bring all the first class bags out first. And so I'm standing, like, off on the side, like 15 feet away where I can see it, but 15 feet away. And then naturally, as more people come, and the more people come, they're coming off the back of the plane. And these are the people that bought like the Priceline ticket for $100, and yet they're the ones that push and they line up around the thing, so you can't even see it.
They block you out. Yep.
And so all the people who paid the most are the ones that are standing at the back of the line, just doing
chilling
the right
out. Yep.
And so that guy on Instagram was the same guy who's standing. His bag isn't coming out for 45 freaking minutes,
but he's going to block everybody else out.
Yeah. And so then I have to walk all the way around, wait for the bag to come all the way around to the end, so that I can get my bag and then go on my way.
You're 100% right.
Instead of everybody just.
Yeah, he doesn't appreciate all the hours that you put in to do all the stuff, and that goes back to him not knowing you and just being a drone and watching the videos. Like you said, he's a taker. He's just trying to take information from you instead of knowing you as a person and your background of like what you do here and what you've been able to accomplish and develop, as opposed to just saying like, well, I just want information from you. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. I just want everything from you, so I don't have to do any work.
And so my point of all of this with BMW is, why wouldn't you want to cater to the lions, in this example? Yeah. Why would you want to cater to that guy who's going to complain? He's going to come in to get service when it doesn't need serviced. He's going to, make
zero loyalty.
Work.
That's those people that they're catering to have zero loyalty.
As soon as someone gives them a better deal or has 2 more horsepower, whatever it is. So when you open up the myriad of people, as soon as a seat has 2 more inches, they're going to jump ship.
Exactly.
Because they're not loyal to it. And so why wouldn't you sit down with your loyal fans,
Yeah.
and you have to have intelligence that your fans are unoriginal, and so they're going to want you to make the same E36 forever. And obviously, you're not going to be able to do that. And so you use that data intelligently to come up with what they would want, even though they don't know what they'd want. And why won't they do that instead of just appealing to this guy that is just going to run them into the ground?
Yeah.
I don't think they have that base. Like, I don't think they built it up like Porsche did with their GT car.
They had it.
I mean,
Yeah, they did. They had it.
M cars were very
Because
exclusive.
you think about it, okay, Porsche, you said GT cars, so I just want to play on that for a second. That's more of a recent development. Porsche has had its enthusiast base way long before that, even in the air-cooled era. Where
Well, they've had it and lost it too over the years.
And they've listened to their people, and then they've stepped out, and then they've had to come back.
Not the 944, the 993
Yeah.
were terrible.
Yeah,
and
like
so there's
they
certain
step out, and then the masses go nuts. Like the loyal enthusiasts go nuts, and they recenter and they QC themselves to back where they should.
Well,
be
the
at.
only reason that happened is because no one bought it.
Yeah. But that's the people who only really were buying Porsches were the enthusiasts. So when the enthusiasts all got together and were just like, we're not buying this car. And that's what happened. But unfortunately, I think where we're at now with the BMW situation is
It's a
they have-
shareholder.
exactly. They have a bunch of the lemmings willing to buy the guy, the information taker guy who just wants that car for now. Because he doesn't care about BMW, because that guy probably owned a freaking Mustang 3 years ago, and that he's just a brand hopper. Whatever's the newest, finest, coolest thing at the moment, the trendsetter moment, like he's that guy.
I guess
who's
there's a lot more of those than there are the hardcore
There
enthusiasts.
is, unfortunately, and unfortunately, they play to those clowns.
But one of the things you could do is just, like Porsche, just raise the price. And so, Porsches have like 22-24% margin in them, and all these accessories that we're buying, I don't even care.
Yeah,
I want them to be successful, because if they are, then they'll make more.
exactly.
They'll have more resources to do more cool stuff.
yeah. I mean, that's what I kind of meant. I wasn't saying that they don't have any passion behind BMW, but they don't have. I feel like there's just a GT, like a flagship.
Yeah.
I feel like that BMW with the M divisions, it's kind of competing against the 911, but that's where it stops. It's not really directly a GT comparison. There's
It's not in the right price point to even
They
go
don't have
there.
any-
Yeah, that's true.
So do you just get that demographic because that's what they've done?
Yeah, it's frustrating, and so it makes me even more convicted, and I wonder if I'm being naive in my life path and choice to stay the course of being convicted on this. You appeal to those that you're meant to appeal to, and you appeal to your base rather than going and attempting to be everything to everyone. And I just think that maybe you would have a better life because you would be super rich, because the old adage is you sell to the masses, you live with the classes.
Yeah, that's true.
But maybe and that's what a BMW does, and why BMW would be bigger than Porsche. But it is frustrating to see as someone who would prefer to consume from those that are in the same mindset, the same classic mindset. Not the guy who puts a neon sign on the wall. That's the guy who's going to buy this new M3.
Yeah, that's true. It's strange, but I mean, it's probably from us just being on the earth for the amount of time we've been on it too. Who knows? Like it turns into one of those things where you're starting to see, decades of stuff because we've been around long enough.
But wouldn't you want to sell
things.
I want to sell to 40 or 50-year-olds, not 20-year-olds.
No, I agree with you. But I think it could be just one of those like where it could just be their design culture, like, and I'm not trying to stand up for them, but it could just be like, maybe we're already out of their mindset. They're like, well, whatever. If you buy, don't care. Like, I want to sell to this 20-year-old because maybe he'll be my customer for the next 40 years.
That is the way they look at it.
It's got to be, yeah.
That's got to be.
Because now, like, you're already kind of at the end of where you're going to be buying for us, like maybe they're already in that demographic of like, all right, you've already outgrown BMW, in their mindset maybe.
Because if you're still here buying a BMW, maybe you're not as successful as we'd want you to be. I don't know. That seems odd to me. or maybe they think they're capturing because they have the 7 Series or the 8 Series of these
maybe,
other cars.
maybe you'll
They don't
graduate
realize-
to the country club car instead of one of the.
There's got to be
enthusiast
some
car.
data. I mean, there can't be that many M3 guys that go to a big pig.
I can see them doing, my M8. That's the dream. I
just would want to, I would want to, if I were them, and you're right, the original guys are probably all moved on, If I were them, I would want to be around. Like, I would guess Andres Proninger has this amazing life where he spends almost all of his time people just loving what he's doing, what he's creating. He probably loves being around. You see him when he's talking to Chris Harris.
Yeah. Andy goes on drives all the time with like clientele and customers.
Right. And that to me is like the ultimate existence. But I think you have to be very intentional in order to realize you choose the happy over the money. Mm-hmm. And then the money comes regardless.
I think so. I think if you hold the course over time, we joked around about it. I think the last time it's like, the overnight 10-year success, right? Like you put 10 years in and you blew up overnight, right? But you stayed the course, and that's why you end up having that long-term success. Like where he came in, I mean, even think about the GT cars as a whole. I wasn't a GT car buyer, but I have friends that were at the very beginning. 996 and 997.1s.
They sat at the dealership.
They couldn't get people to buy them. They couldn't give those cars away because people, classic Porsche people, were still buyers at that time, and they didn't understand the car. They're like, well, why would I buy that car?
Right?
Why would I just not buy the Turbo? Because Turbo was the flagship for decades.
More horsepower.
Decades and decades. Like, and now you have this track/street car. Like,
it's more expensive.
If I want to go to the track, why didn't I just buy a track car? Like, it was just this new concept where people were just not getting their heads around it. And then the .2 came around. It started getting this cachet behind it, and it started to get all the attention of people in our generation of like, okay, this is an interesting car, and they're doing interesting things with these cars. Like, and it sounds amazing, and it does all of these cool things. Like, this is a really cool car, and it starts more and more and more and more, and now here we are, 2020.
And the 991 came out, and then you could drive it every day if you wanted to.
Yeah, so even within a big brand, in the sense of not a big brand, but big named brand, Porsche, they even had slow success with a product.
Yeah.
Like in 04, that was 16 years ago, and like the launch of that product, people didn't understand it, and they were kind of like not wanting it. Even the Porsche faithful. And now, now you're giving your firstborn to go get an allocation to get one. Mm-hmm. So it's all, I think time is the test on a lot of these things.
Yeah, I'm just frustrated, man. I just want. I so aspired to I could have never dreamt to be where I'm at in life. Chasing passion, making more money than I thought I'd ever make, and having resources, and then not. The hope that I had was that I'd be able to buy a new BMW every year.
Yeah,
and I could, but they're just I don't even want it. Like if you gave it to me, I'd say I don't want it.
Yeah.
Just so sad.
It is. That was, and I know where your headspace was at. You were like, okay, my Porsches are going to be my toys, and my M3 new variant, whatever that is going to be my daily.
Yeah, it's going to be my awesome car my practical but yet awesome car, and it's so fun to order and experience the delivery and to, prep that new car and to.
Well, that's the ultimate German car garage right there. The Porsches for the toys, your sports car mountain stuff, and then your daily in the M3.
Yeah.
And I even had that vision at my point, like being a BMW guy, but I'm with you on that where they've taken it and they've dismantled a product that used to be so good.
Yeah, and it's gone mainstream. It's sell it to the masses, even though it's gotten more, a lot bigger and a lot more expensive. A lot less practical and a lot less
they
attainable.
Probably, if we rewind the clock a little bit about on this, like they probably really sold their soul to the devil when they started putting M packages on things.
Right.
That's when they really started to sell their soul to the devil, just to make a couple extra bucks. They took a special part of their brand
that goes
and
to the back
gave
of
it to everyone.
Add 2 inches to the width,
exactly,
and put this feature or that feature, and let me just put this M badge, and then you have the company. There's just too many names.
It's like, oh, you can afford a 3 Series, but you can't afford an M3, but you want a little bit of flavor, and we can make an extra $6,000 on you by putting some M badging and trim in your car. We'll take your $6,000, and you can pretend you have an M car.
And I'm super okay with a company driving and creating something that I want that I didn't know I wanted. You know, Apple does that all the time to me.
Yeah.
And you know, so I'm not looking for them to like listen to us specifically. They're gonna have to innovate, but you know, just stop this, you know, this corporate bean counting bullcrap, which just seems pretty clear to me that that's what they're doing, and they're so excited for the car, and it just feels so sad for them that it's just gone awry. So we can only hope again that nobody buys it, and that they see that, and then they come out with something great. But I'm
fingers crossed for that. So all you BMW faithful that are listening out there, don't be a lemming. Hold strong. Buy the old stuff. Go live in the vintage BMW world for a little bit, and then until they course correct, essentially.
Unfortunately, they're probably already in the design stages for whatever's coming up next, and it's going to follow suit.
Yep. Because I would live inside the BMW ecosystem. I don't care how much money I had.
No, I mean,
I don't care if I was making $20 million a year. I'd still want an M3.
Yeah, that used to be an awesome sedan. It also used to be an awesome sports car. Like it used to be those things, but it hasn't been that for a while, unfortunately. And it's sadly, like, that's how fast it can go away. Like, look how long it told them to build that reputation, right? And how quickly you can make it diminished. It's like that in life. Like, you can make it takes you forever to make the money, right? But you can lose it very quickly. So it's like they're losing their reputation very quickly over this.
Yeah. Well, they've lost me.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure many others like me.
Yeah, I mean, I think tons of people have jumped ship, and I think people were jumping ship back when you were talking about the F80. Like, it was even before this. I think this was just the nail in the coffin with this whole grill business and all that stuff. Like, I think that was it. I think the ones that were hanging on, like, they were still making excuses even for like the fart exhaust and all that stuff. I think even that group finally, those old school guys or the enthusiasts, the BMW enthusiasts, were like, all right, this is enough. Enough is enough here.
Well, the tuners, we'll see what happens there, because they're kind of stuck.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
They're kind of stuck in having to buy these things and create parts for them. And
yeah, it's true.
Until it goes EV, and then they got nothing to do. Well, I guess they can still tune the EVs. They can look at
computer. Yeah, look at the. I've got all kinds of parts coming.
Yeah. True.
Excited.
And you know how much crap I'm going to take for. I bought carbon ceramics for a car that you don't even use the brakes.
It's regenerative.
Yeah, so you like literally use the brakes like 5% of the time, and I bought carbon ceramics for it because I think it's cool.
That's cool, though. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a lot of new.
Well, I'm going to try to
you're going to get a
de-nerd
lot of new blood that just comes across, and maybe you're going to educate a lot of these nerds on the Tesla and bring over some car passion to it, as far as like, instead of it just being a driving computer.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of real car guys out there that have bought them and modified them, made them cool, but no one's really shared it.
Yeah,
and so there aren't really any guys on there that are sharing like proper modification. Everything's wraps. Everything's lowering springs. Everything is maybe airbags, but nothing like legit. Like there's MPP Performance that I bought. It's a KW variant. It's a KW suspension. They look like Hyperco springs that they're sort of marrying to a KW shock, and there's like no videos on it.
Yeah,
I'm sure they've sold probably a few thousand sets of them, but there's no data. There's no information on those products. So it's going to do really well for them to for me to make videos on it, and then other people make videos on it. Other people make videos on it. But I was looking for that
all the
information.
Free advert they're getting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was looking for that information. So when I'm looking,
somebody else has to be too.
Yeah, there has to be. But right now, there's nothing but nerds that this is their first car or their first performance car. Guys who weren't even interested in cars, and they're so worried about the I don't know, the windshield wiper squirters and floor mats.
Yeah.
You
You're
know?
absolutely right. I have a friend that works for Tesla, and he says a lot of the people that even are buying those cars, that's the first car a lot of the guys that are buying those cars
Yeah.
that are they're interested about cars for the first time.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so there's a real opportunity. I'm gonna sort of dumb it down a little bit, and so after I'm insult them, then I'm gonna help them, if you will.
Kind of like you did with the Corvette people when you sold their, like put their car up for.
So I'm gonna insult first, and then so this is where I would be smart.
You got to do the geek glasses and everything. Dude.
I would be smart if I followed BMW's example and didn't insult everybody and do it
True.
in my style. But anyway,
Just give them a little flavor. You got to give them a little backhand, and then be like, "All right, cool. Here's the deal. I'm glad you guys have bought a car."
right. Well, let's teach you how to wash the
Exactly.
thing.
Let's make it cool for you.
Yeah. So wait till you see the
Because
wheels.
we know Tesla paints crap from the factory.
Yeah, it's probably not good, but it seems good enough.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's gotten a lot better than it did when it was like brand new.
Yeah, I'm less. I'm less interested in car guy lore and more interested in like actual like real experience, and so people like to generalize, and I always like to rebel against that generalization, as you might imagine, and so I'm gonna really analyze it, and if the generalizations are correct, then I'll own up to it. But
Yeah.
But most likely not. It's just the masses.
yeah, I think it's going to be just fine, and and I'm very discerning, and I think it'll be acceptable for what it is. I mean, it is ultimately a $36,000 base car, and one would argue that BMW has $36,000 car and their paint isn't jacked up. Well, BMW is 100 years old,
Exactly.
and so I think I'm going into it with expectations that are a little different than somebody who has been buying used $10,000 cars, now bought a $36,000 car and is expecting perfection, because to them
It's a
that's
new car and it should be.
right. It's
Yeah.
their perfect. To me, this is a refrigerator I just bought that I want to try out.
Exactly.
And so I'm not expecting as much out of it, and so I'm interested to see. I haven't gotten under the lights or anything to see. I'm sure there's some paint runs and things, but how bad is that?
Yeah. I think the honest, you're coming from a good mindset, and even not being a Tesla owner, but knowing their background and their history, I think they get a part in too. I think people are really harsh on them for what they have. And I think it goes back to that masses talk we were talking about. All those trolls get together, and then they're like, "Oh, well, this is a car, and look at the door gaps, and look at this, and look at that." And I'm like,
They're
they're
calling
a brand new car company, man.
They're calling Tesla owners sheep.
Even though it's the most.
They're the
educated.
freaking lions.
Yeah.
That's what the whole sheep lion thing is completely opposite.
Yeah.
The people that are, even though they're nerds, they're still lions of society in that they're going in and trying
Exactly.
something new. They're
Absolutely.
And they're funding it too. I mean, they're
Yeah.
putting their dollars and saying, "Let's make this better."
The thing that is a little odd is that somebody said, "Thank you so much for going into sustainable energy." And then I start to think, I'm like, I never really thought about this, because I don't think about this that often, but it's lithium and cobalt being ripped out of the earth. And then I Googled, I said, how do they actually get lithium? Where does lithium come from? So they take millions of gallons of water and they spray it on a bed of salt, I guess it is.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's a salt
lithium
bed.
comes from salt
It's
beds.
a salt bed.
And then it has to sit there for you have to keep it wet for 18 months or something like that to then somehow extract the lithium. And cobalt only comes from one place in the world.
Yeah.
And it's from this, the area of the Congo or something.
Strip mine the shit out of it to get it.
Right. And then these batteries, it's a lot cheaper to make a new one than it is you can't really recycle them. Once the material is used up, it's hard to you can't regenerate it. And so you have these two rare, and I guess lithium isn't a rare earth material, but cobalt, I think, is one of the rare earth metals or compounds. And so you have these two materials that are at, I think, a more limited quantity than oil. And oh, by the way, to get electricity, you have to frickin' burn coal and natural gas and oil
To get
it.
And then not even to get into the deep part, that's a whole nother thing we could get into, the disposal of the battery when it's not any good anymore.
Right.
So now it's like, what?
Right. So, and I'm not arguing that
Yeah.
because obviously a fossil fuel driven car is worse.
Yeah.
But it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the heck freaking people are talking about.
Well, that's the thing is like these electric cars are not without their cons, right? Like people pull the wool over their eyes of like, oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And it's like, okay, it still does have its vices about it. There's still issues with there's parts of it. This isn't perfect either, okay?
Right. So I was like, I just thought of that. I wasn't trying to make an argument or...
Yeah.
It's like, it occurs to me that this might even be worse. That
and depending on where you live and if they're sourcing that material from you, it definitely is a lot worse, because if you live in that environment where they're taking those resources from you and you happen to live there,
right?
Yeah, it's way worse.
Right. And so, we're so concerned in the United States and Europe. I mean, the U.S. and Europe are not the contributing issue to, global climate, whatever.
Yeah.
Or it's where it's being made.
Yeah.
That we can't see. Where they're ripping it out of the ground in Africa and China, and then all this.
The air pollution in China is so horrible.
Right. Because they're making all the stuff that we're consuming.
Exactly.
And so I don't know. It just doesn't. It's not this benevolent thing. Certainly not. It's a new thing. It has advantages, but it's certainly not benevolent.
Yeah.
For
Absolutely
sure.
not. Yeah. I was the same. I had the same thought process just because I'm like interested about things. So when all of this EV stuff really started coming out, like I did my due diligence and did some like background and stuff and saw how the pros and cons of it, obviously the pros of it, with the exhaust emissions and all that kind of stuff, but the cons, and I'm like, man, some of this stuff is pretty detrimental to the environment too. Like when you have to like dispose of a wrecked car and it becomes hazardous material now, and now you have to do all this stuff, and what do you do with it? You put it in the ground, or what is this stuff?
Right.
It's going back in the earth too, but now it's poisoning the earth, as opposed to when it was a raw material before it lived in the earth naturally. So there's pros and cons to it. Obviously, that's a whole nother long, nasty debate.
Yeah, it is a cool. It's a interest. I want to say cool. I almost said cool. It's not cool at all. It's freaking nerd city. You're driving around in that thing, I feel like such a dork. But it is a very interesting car. I'm glad I got one. I bought the inexpensive one to see if maybe a Model S made more sense. It's the consensus. The Model 3 is the more nimble, more a better handling car. It's lighter weight, and so it's the tuners that make a lot more stuff for it. So that's why I bought that one. And when it came out, I thought that thing is stupid. Looks hideous. So I'm gonna try to make it cool.
There you go.
And we'll see what happens.
Excited to see it.
And we'll see if if I don't get murdered by making fun of everybody with it.
Yeah, you're used to it. You've been around long enough. You're used to the troll activity. You just put it on the ignore.
People are like, who's this guy calling people a nerd? And I'm
Exactly.
like, I've been called many things, but a nerd is certainly not freaking one of them. Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, that'll be exciting to see. I'm excited to see that. Do you have anything, Aaron, before we let Matt go? He's a busy guy. We've been sucking up his time.
My one question was, have you played Wu-Tang Clan in the Civic Si I sent you?
Oh, yeah. Been driving around listening to Wu-Tang, Tribe Called Quest.
There you go.
I even broke out some of my old punk, like I was listening to Operation Ivy and No Effects in there, too.
Yeah.
And
I was hanging out with somebody in their 20s the other day, and they're so young, and I think we were at a bowling alley of all places, and Tribe Called Quest came on. I was like, oh, this is such a good song. And they're like, what is this? And I just literally gave them RBF face and was just like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know who this is?
Oh, yeah, I've listened to all kinds of De La Soul.
Nice. Some Naughty by Nature.
No, see, I never did. I was East Coast only guy back in the day.
Gotcha.
Except for Tupac.
Yeah.
So when I ran out of East Coast rap, then I went into a little bit of West Coast. Yeah. And then I realized that I'm a whitey white, and and I started listening to like sound cue music when I started selling home theater and stuff. Then I started to get into like it was great because I never got into like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or the Eagles or anything like that until I was older. So it was still left. It was all new to me. It was great.
Yeah. So it was like,
stuff.
Yeah. So cool. Well, thanks for coming up, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Matt Moreman of Cess Garage, thanks for your time. Mike and Aaron from P-Car Talk. We loved it, man. It's always great coming over here and seeing your growth, and you're kicking butt, man. And
Well, I'm trying to survive now. You know, it's trying to learn how to manage humans. It's not so easy for me. It was easy for me to do it all myself.
Yeah.
And now I'm in this weird place where I'm attempting to figure out how to exist in this space. The responsibility that I have for other humans' success, and then not stepping in and stealing the win from them.
That goes back to that controlling thing. That you probably battle with that daily.
Yeah, the difficulty of apathy versus being driven too hard and too fast. So
it's a delicate balance, right?
Yeah, I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
So thanks for your time, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of P-Car Talk. Connect with us on Instagram at P-Car Talk or online at pcartalk.com.